What are those?
That's my
That's your
today.
life.
My madness
That's
today.
your life.
And all I need is this one thing. I'm like, Stacy, little to big. This thing goes little to big. What are you talking about? Little to big. Little to big. Little guy. Big. That's my
That's your
today.
life.
My madness
That's
today.
your life.
And all I need is this one thing. I'm like, Stacy, little to big. This thing goes little to
Who's
big.
on Zoom?
What are you talking about?
We got three.
All right.
So
Big.
you,
Little to big.
Terry,
Little guy.
and one other. That's Schultze. We got people in
So
the Zoom.
this.
David Schultz.
So let's see. Can you guys say, David? Can you say something?
Yeah.
Okay. Now hopefully this will work. Because if not, I'll have to go. I'll just put it just real fast for fun of it. Say something again, Davey.
Hey now. Hey
No, that's not
now.
right. Don't worry. Just give me a sec. I gotta get you plugged in. I can hear you.
So we used to talk about like split brain stuff in philosophy of mind, but now I think we're gonna have to start talking about like quad brains or something.
Yeah, this is getting out of
'Cause
control,
we
man.
got Zoom, we got YouTube, we got live.
This is multiple modalities.
This is multiple modalities.
We got Stacy.
Here we go, baby.
All right, sorry for the
The main thing is, Stacy, if this isn't in here, that would be hilarious. There's no way. There we go. So like I should always have a million of them, and it's this little to big. Boop.
We're gonna put this on a card.
Okay. This goes little to big.
All right. Anything else that you need?
Wouldn't it be funny if this thing has a line in? No, because then it wouldn't help me. All right, there we
This
go.
is another microphone.
Now, hey, Davey, would you try talking again, my man?
Yeah. Hip hip hooray.
Wait, this is close. This is close.
Hip hip hooray.
Wait, let's try it again.
This is the day the Lord has made.
Wait.
Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
It's not. I'm not hearing it.
Not yet. Okay, I've got a plan. I can add, Stacey, one more thing. I can add a fourth microphone. If I can add a fourth microphone.
Okay. Do we have a fourth microphone?
Yep.
Where would that be? It's not plugged into anything?
Not plugged in. And there's a cord. There's a thing over there. We'll be starting just a second.
No problem, Jeff. Don't worry about it.
All right.
There's also this microphone, but here. So
All right.
you,
The main thing. All right, Schulte, try talking again, my man.
Hip hip hooray.
Oh, this is good. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Hip hip hooray. Hip hip hooray.
Okay, pause. This is good.
Are you looking for one of these cords? No, you want one of the John Jordan.
Okay, try it again.
Hip hip hooray.
Is he coming through here? Or is he coming through there?
I heard him.
Oh, okay, try it again.
Hip hip hooray.
Yeah, he's coming through.
It's coming through here, but it's not very loud.
Do you want one of these cords?
Yeah. Okay, could you try one more time, Davey?
Hip hip hooray. Hip,
All right,
hip,
pause.
Hooray. Hip parade.
I don't know
All
what
right.
the plan is.
Okay, so what I need to do is see if I can get my audio. There we Oh, yeah. Last hip, Davey.
Hip hip hooray. Hip hip.
You still with me, Schulte, for a hip? Okay. All right.
He's on.
That's a lot of hooray. That's
He's
a lot of
on.
hip. All right.
That's a
Almost
lot of
done.
hurrah, hooray, hurrah.
Stacey, remember, I got to remind myself to test one. Checking 1, 2. Checking 1, 2.
It's not working. Didn't work. Here. Now in case it's the microphone.
Testing 1. What these other guys? Checking 1.
Uh-oh.
I got this.
Are they on?
No. Last thing. I can try this. This is good. All right, friends, almost
Hello,
there.
hello?
No, I got this. There we go.
Hello? Yep.
There, that was
one's not
this.
very loud, but uh-oh, went off.
No. And I'm taking that up for a second.
Okay.
Try one more time.
Hello?
Okay, One more time, Davey.
Hip, hip, hooray.
Awesome.
Hey
These other
now.
mics.
Hey now. Hey now.
Hip, hip, hooray.
Yep.
Hello, hello.
All right. So I got this. We're all good. We'll look at this. All right. So this is the last one. Get everybody down.
Yep, 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 yep.
There we go. All right. One last time, Davey.
Hip, hip, hooray. Dandy.
Okay. All right. We're good.
Woohoo. This is not
Check
working
one.
more. This one, it's just really low, I guess.
I got it.
Look at this magic.
I find this chair not
Check,
very
check,
comfortable.
check, check, check.
Start plugging things in. And
Check, check, check.
See if they work.
Well, that's what Jeff was
Checking
saying, like,
1,
the
2.
mental
Checking 1, 2.
energy
Everything's good now?
behind trying
All right. I'm going to
to-
record and we're going to get started. And we're going to record. And no, the other one's already getting started. So, hey, everybody, come on down. Thank you so much for being here.
This one is
Wow. I know that my wife and I call ourselves the Dow surfers, and we are always spazzed and not Dow, but that's not unlikely at a university. I may not have mentioned this before. Come on down, panel. Come on, get down here, panel. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, let's do it down here.
What? Down here?
No. We got your setup. We're good. We're good.
What are you saying? Sit down.
Oh,
You're making me stressed, bro. We're gonna get this thing started. Anyway, I was saying that in my experience, and I've been at many, many universities. This is not this place. It's every place I've ever been. Some of the most godless people I will ever meet are in the theology department. Some of the craziest people I will ever meet are in the psych department. And some of the business people that can't actually run, businesses, they run the business department. And this is not a shame on us. And I'm not saying this here. We're fine. We're absolutely the best. But it is that sometimes the thing that we seek after is precisely the thing that we need. And I said this a while back, and at a convocation that I thought was, I think maybe the timing was wrong, but I think the sentiment is right. And that is, I know a friend who dropped out of high school. Well, he didn't drop out, but he went to one of the special completion schools, and he wasn't doing so well with a little thing called science. And to this day, he knows everything about science because he grows medical marijuana in another state. And he knows everything about pH balance and humidity and UV light and everything. And there's only one reason that he knows this is because for him, he knows exactly what he's after, right? And what he's after, he's making sure he is able to grow what he's going to grow and make his profit. And he wants to do it right. He wants well. So the point being, in many ways, we can make fun of this idea that when we have struggles in faith, we pursue it. This is true of all the mystics. I mean, maybe not all the mystics, but certainly many of the mystics were not people that were gullible or had kind of a naive faith. They were typically people that were dead set on finding their experience or the presence of God, because it was what they thirsted after, right? And I'm saying this because a lot of students I've had this semester at our little polis have been beating themselves up because they're not performing the way they thought they performed. You did well in high school, and now you just can't finish that absolutely simple paper, right? Because you don't know when you're at work or at home or studying or watching cartoons. It's all bleeding together. And we've had a hard semester. It's been so much better than I thought. I didn't think we'd be able to be doing this early on in the semester. I figured we might be in a little bit of better shape at the end. How's our little polis? Dr. Armstrong started us out with this little city. How's our little city doing? We learned about chaos dragons this semester with the Cui Bono and related events. We learned that maybe we are we're the civilization that is the chaos dragon for Paul Eliot. We learned from Michael Bornet that Shakespeare was kind of a rapper. And we learned in many ways that this little polis is something that brings certain obligations to one another. But maybe that's exactly what we need in these times when a lot of people are feeling a little bit lonely. I've got a few questions for this fine panel here. And tonight, what we're doing is this is like we could have done a podcast, but we're not supposed to be inside, so this is perfect. We're here with you outside, and we'll invite some of your questions later. But I'm just gonna get a conversation going. They don't know what I'm gonna ask them.
But the first thing I want to do is start with a proposed set of nominations if we were to have an award ceremony. So if in January we awarded people something, the best in category, that's what we're looking for now. And you may be thinking about this as well, and I'll come and bother you. Let me just give you mine as you're thinking. So I'm going to be asking you fine people. Sarah Karam down there. You know all these fine people. Dr. C.J. Armstrong, right? Dr. Caleb Cargis, Dr. Paul Elliott, Dr. Kristen Koenig, and Dr. Dan Dean. We're here to chat with you, but online for the first time ever, we've got, look at it, reverse this. We're playing this new high-tech game. This is like Star Trek. We've got, let's see, you got Dr. David Schultz and Dr. Carrie Tom, folks from this semester. If you have not been able to check out the podcast, please do over the break. Maybe as you're taking a jog or driving or on a plane. You don't want to listen to all of them, I mean, maybe you do, that's great. But the way you listen to a podcast, I think, unless it's a serial podcast, is you pick and choose. It's like a magazine. Which article do you want? So part of what I want to do is clue you into things that maybe you missed. Let me give you a few of these. I would like to nominate the award for the best host to go to Dr. Kristen Koenig. Dr. Koenig has had, how many events have you had this year? 5? You gotta talk into the microphone for the 5? And it felt like that was what I needed. That's what my heart needed. I need 2 things. There's some ladies at church that hug the sadness out of me when I'm allowed to go to church, and that's what's been hard. So I can't have the ladies in LA hugging the sadness out of me, but I can see your smiling faces concealed every Tuesday at 5:30, and a lot of times we're doing it with tacos. I really like that one. I think Kaylee should get the nomination for the best student participation award. Mom, look at me. Yeah, that's what you came to college for. The best talk I didn't think I'd really learn much about or from, but it blew my mind, and that is definitely Paul Elliott on the Cthulhian deities and dragons and the apocalypse. And it's not because of anything other than I used to go to a college, or I used to be the dean of a department at an evangelical university in Colorado, just north of Focus on the Family and a bunch of other parachurch organizations. And so a lot of these people cared a lot about the end times. I had a student in my class who was the son of the guy who wrote the Left Behind series, which is something that you should look very closely at on the first day of class when you make fun of that book. So I try not to do that. I also made fun of Biola at one point. I do love you all at Biola, but the daughter, or the granddaughter of the guy who founded Talbot, or the Talbot Seminary there, was in my class too. So for you, I wish you would just forgive me in advance, okay? Father, forgive me, I'm about to sin again, and I don't want to. I think the best podcast that you might not have heard if you don't listen to podcasts is definitely the one with Joe Papa, an alumnus, talking about this thought-provoking question about insurgency with Dr. Cargis. If you don't know, there's a couple things going on. We've got this, the History Suite, which is a featured series within the stream that we send out of Cui Bono Cast, and that's Caleb Cargis is hosting that right now with a student or two and an alumnus each time. Really interesting, especially if you're digging history. It's some of the best just kind of content that you get. Well, we've got somebody here. Jacob Lang has been on the show. Fantastic work. What I really liked about the Joe Pop thing was he talked about history and military strategy with Dr. Cargis in a way that was very informative. But it also then applied it to our lives. Cui bono, who stands to gain? Well, I gained, but I also realized how important ideas are, and that we've fallen into this rut of kind of having such thin brake pads on everything. It's metal to metal, and that's my way of saying we're at a time when we used to spend a lot of our energy nuancing our political and cultural and theological perspectives, and it's become more and more. It's thinner. I don't know the metaphor I'm looking for. The air is thinner in the world, but not with Concordia. You know, when I would say the most to me, for some reason, it just kind of it did something to my my scalp. I don't know how to say this another way. I had this just really profound, almost mystical epiphany from something that Sarah Karen was talking about when she was talking about gender. I thought we were going to do another, okay, ladies should be allowed to vote. 100 years ago, we decided this, so let's keep it going, friends. And there was just the way that you made it both personal and brought in the kind of the science that you studied and so forth to do really what is the best about liberal arts is just totally jarring me for a second. Like, what are you talking about? How did you take it in this direction, And that direction helped me to see things in a way that I'd never seen before, and helped me to see something that we talked about over the summer that I didn't understand, And so it's like sometimes these conversations aren't just now. It's the semester, it's our whole lives, and we kind of are so grateful to you. I really mean this. Do you know, there's no better life than this, and it's hard. But I mean, we get to talk to you on Zoom and talk about your fears and your ideas and your research agenda and your applications to grad school. We are so grateful. You don't have to be here. You're not getting a grade. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, those are my nominations just to get us started. What about you, fine friends? What are your nominations? Just a fun way to get us started. Nominate some things. Maybe anything, something the students talked about, any panel.
I have my nomination for the people who are not here. My favorite three invisible friends who would have been able to join us tonight had not been for other things. And that would be Dr. John Liu, without whom none of this actually happens, because he's the best kind of cattle prod to say, hey, let's do some stuff that's off the page. Let's do some stuff that's outside of class, and let's actually talk about things that matter. Dr. Jack Schultz, who has been with us several times this term and is one of the best conversationalists at College of Arts and Sciences and at Concordia University in general. And Dr. Brett Taylor, who, if he were not laid up in infirmity right now, he has the of all of these things. And without those three men in my life, I know my life would be a great deal less. Those would be my nominations for the three invisible friends who really ought to be here, and I know are in spirit.
Carrie or Dave, do you if you have any nominations? I'll put the mic out to you.
I nominate Dr. Jeffrey Mallinson for all of his efforts to bring people in, like me and Dr. Tom right now, and to make sure everything's working, to invite people to podcasts, to find various platforms and medium through which to reach students in these strange times in which we live. So to you, Dr. Mallinson, I nominate you for being a connector in all ways, physical and virtual.
My old pal. Thank you very much. I also want to nominate myself. Dr. I haven't seen it. Dr. Tom's talk on Wonder Woman. I put her face on Wonder Woman, and feel pretty good about that. That deep faith. Dr. Tom, do you have any nominations?
Is Ellie Swan there?
Eliana?
Is Eliana Swan there?
Yes, she is.
I want to know.
No, but
she's often there, right?
Yeah, we'll tell her about it.
Okay, so I nominate Ellie for always having a bringing thoughts together that I never would have seen, and the way she brings stuff together and encourages thoughtfulness amongst her professors and her fellow students.
Wasn't it? Well, I mean, that's some of the best part. Well, we'll have like this one little thing to riff on, and then all of a sudden the students can take it and make connections and really just take it in these new directions that make it just so much better. Agreed. Other nominations.
I got to nominate for best editor, also Dr. Jeffrey Mallinson. He is also the only editor of the podcast.
This is not gonna. Okay, this is nothing of that.
I'll make a another nomination for best talk. The other one was the election night after with Koenig, Schultz, and Lou. I thought that was pretty precious.
Very helpful, and it was really nice that what we were able to do is, Dr. Koenig called an audible, and I don't know. We thought, oh, there's Eliana, right? We were just talking about you. And positive, Dr. Tom nominated you for something. We'll send it in the mail to you. You won. Well, we haven't voted yet. Lost my train of thought. Other nominations.
I mean, this is like the podcast, right? That we started at the beginning of the year, where Karen's like, "Wait, I didn't know we were meant to thank each other before we start." But no, Dr. Dean is also in charge of Cui Bono, so he's like the back, kind of what in the shadows kind of guy, which seems very appropriate for his personality.
So if you think we're doing this just to kind of all congratulate ourselves, thank you very much for that. The reason I wanted to do that is to soften the blow of the next piece. One of my favorite theologians to hate and love at the same time is St. Augustine of Hippo. I named my oldest son after this guy, and some days I'm proud of that because he's a philosopher of time, which is the dopest thing you could be. No? See, that's analytic. I was like, I just like treating all of existence like it's a cereal box. Riboflavin, 42%. That's great, Dr. D. But then also he had hang-ups about ladies, and he thought that sex is only for procreation, which is a drag superior, like the exact opposite of dope, right? Like, hey there. Well, hi. Our first contestant is a profound thinker and the bishop of Hippo, and a rhetorician, par excellence. Also, philosopher of time. Ooh, and thinks you should only have sex for procreation. If that.
See, Jeff, you didn't hang out with much philosophers. You would have known that if somebody's doing philosophy of time, they ain't getting much sex.
That's
good God.
If you're in France, okay, if you're in France with a cigarette and at a coffee shop, maybe, but let's not go that way. Let's go this different way, my friend. At the end of his life, okay, so what I'm saying is he made mistakes. He said stupid things. He said smart things. He said profound things. He got us off on the wrong track on some things. But at the end of his life, there's a little text that he's got called the Retractiones. Sorry about that. He amended things that he thought. Now, I remember Dr. Rosenblatt, my professor here, one of my favorite professors when I was a student here. Many of us know who this is. He made a comment that really stuck with me, and it helped me to become a Lutheran. When I came here, I was a Calvinist, and if you're a Calvinist, I love you, and I did from before all time, or I hate you, and I have hated you before you came to college. So you'll never really know unless you feel it in your heart, and that's going to drive you nuts. So come to Lutheranism, it's much nicer water. Anyway, he said that that's not the big issue, it was an intellectual issue, and he said that John Calvin, after he converted to Protestantism, never changed his mind once. He just got more long-winded about it. So in 1536, this guy named John Calvin was a poet. He was writing on Seneca's clemency. I mean, I love this guy. He's the guy I want to hang out with. Now, I don't want to have sex with him, but I want to go to have a smoke at the cafe with him and have a chat about Seneca. And then all of a sudden,
he wasn't doing philosophy of time.
No, and he gets into 1536, and he writes the Institutes of the Christian Religion, arguably, stylistically, the absolute best little theological manual I think there is. I think the best catechism that exists, even though I don't agree with it jot and tittle, is the Heidelberg Catechism. The best, rhetorically, the best theology of the 16th century is John Calvin's Institutes. You don't have anything like it in Luther. I don't think that means it's all right. It's just the style is just beyond elegant. But he never changed his mind between the 1536 edition and the 1556 edition. He just added more arguments, right? He added more evidence to it. Now, maybe he was right the whole time. And of course, in the Reformed tradition, if you know about theology, it's the nice thing about Calvinism is it fits together really well, like a Swiss watch, right? But this is what I'm doing. I'm stalling for you guys to retract. What do you want to retract about something you said this semester? And I'll look over at the screen every once in a while for, Dr. Schultz or Dr. Tom, you can put those little icons up, like the little handhold. You put the hand up, but also you can just switch your mic on and we'll hear you. The fact is, so I don't have to call in retractions.
I'm going to go for a full retraction, but you pointed this out after my talk, right? So, and you made fun of me right now for being an analytic philosopher. I did my talk on Camus, which is somebody way outside of my wheelhouse, right? And it made me see the value. So the way people usually explain it to me, like why they go continental, like I can't understand why people would actually engage in that as a love of life. I don't really understand why people would engage in analytic philosophy as a love of life either. That's why I'm kind of an anarchist on this stuff. But engaging with that side helped me understand the when people say to me, "Oh, but continental philosophy is so much more human." Like I never understood what that meant until I actually get a little bit more of a deeper dive into Camus. So it would be a retraction, not of things that this would be more like, my retractios that he wrote at the end of his life, right? At the beginning of my philosophical career, I would have never gone down the route of Camus. But now here I am 20 years on, and I spent some time with Camus, and as I even said in my talk, yeah, I kind of love the guy. I don't want to have sex with him.
Okay, that's the last time. It's a yellow card, but I do like the joke. I like the joke, but it's a college campus for Christian.
Okay, but he can bring to life certain themes that run across the continental analytic divide in a way that say, I'm not going to get when I read Hume or Kant or the classics of analytic tradition. Be a bridge, but whatever.
First of all, I just thought the fact that you did that was really delightful. I really want to commend you for it. But I also want to say that you evaded the question and self-aggrandized. What Dr. Dean just did is what you should do in your next interview. Well, Kaylee, what are your greatest weaknesses? Well, one of my greatest weaknesses is being too thorough. Sometimes I ask a question and I write down every detail. Although I do feel that sometimes in a profession like I'm applying for right now, that could come in handy.
I'm going to double down on that right now because I wasn't going to answer the question either. I was going to say what I learned from my colleagues is you should go back and listen to some of these pieces. So I have done that, and there's some really good gems in that. And it's something I tell my students is I reread with them. So even though that's taxing and how many times have I read Sociological Imagination, Our Kids, Marx? But there is something in the rereading, especially in a different time period or just maybe where you're at. It's like, I missed that. And so Dr. Elliott, in like 30 minutes, was like so power packed that I want him to go back, maybe he could do it now, and unpack some of that for us. So yes, I'm also not answering the question. I also really appreciate that. I think the best talk that I felt was the one listening to Karam and Schultz. And that's because we've worked through so much back room chatter on this. So we have a lot of arguments not in front of you.
You're talking about the politics stuff?
It's just, no, the one on gender. So there was a level of trust. Like we didn't have to prep for it. We didn't have to, have a big, long conversation. We were like, okay, this is kind of the slant that we're taking. It's really nice to trust your colleagues, to be able to be like, all right, we're going in pretty raw and just saying the things that we're thinking or processing. So that's a gift of the semester for me, at least, even though that wasn't the question.
Hello. Okay. I'll take this more seriously. The thing that I learned this semester that I apologize for, particularly to those of you who have had me in a class, I didn't realize till everybody pointed it out to me, and then I tried listening to myself, that everything is a question. And so that inflection thing, I'm like,
You mean the way you talk?
Yes, I apologize to you all, literally, for the way that I talk. Because I had no idea, and I was so naive and blessed. And now every day it weighs deeply upon my soul that I inflicted this upon you and now upon myself.
That totally makes sense, because Sarah, sometimes I have deep regard for you, but you terrify me because you're like, I'm like, okay, so a 7-Up for here, 7-Up? Like, what, you want a cocktail? Like, what? Yeah, but that's okay. You shouldn't beat yourself up about it. That was the question.
I do think part of the issue is it really pointed out to me that I do have that lack of certainty about everything. And so I am conveying that to you when everything is a question. I can tell you something, and in the back of my head, there's always like asterisk. I just don't say them out loud except through inflection. So one recommendation I have for you all is just like in public speaking where they're like, listen to yourself, right? Hear yourself. There was a lot to be gained in the 27 seconds I could tolerate listening to myself. And then the rest of it I couldn't tolerate, but I still did it.
Dr. Schultz, do you have any tips for people that want to work on their public persona? Yeah, no, not persona, the speaking style. What I mean, obviously, a lot of people have taken this maybe to class with you, but not everybody has. Could you give us maybe one little tidbit, one little insight about how to watch yourself without freaking out and hating yourself?
How to watch yourself. Watch yourself with friends that you trust and that can tell you, no, it's okay. It's all right. That was good. You know, that can affirm your, so Sarah, just watch yourself with other folks, your husband, your kids that can allay your fears and concerns. We are, after all, our own biggest critics, I would say.
I like that he thinks that would be affirming.
It depends on the family, right? Any other retraction? You don't have to have them. You just stick with Paul. Paul's like, I don't believe in the Old Testament anymore.
So in the
This
panel
puts
we
me in
had
an
in
awkward
global,
professional position. Sorry.
Okay, I got a couple of retractions. So in the panel we had at Global Village that we put together, I'd like to retract my last minute putting together of that, or confess. Second of all, I made, in the words of Jacob Lang, veiled threats against the core. I would like to retract those. And then also, I would just like to retract my entire Core 301 class this semester. That was, it could have been done better, but nevertheless, I also would like to retract, for those of you in that class, the documentary you had to watch. I am sorry to have inflicted that upon you and upon myself. The America, the Story of Us, was terrible. Yeah, the whole thing, it was bad. It was real bad.
Paul's about to have a change of mind too.
I mean, the whole point of that documentary was that baby boomers who work in the communications industry are the pinnacle of the American experience. That was the point of the documentary.
These poor students are young enough now to realize that it's kind of a cop-out sometimes for us to be throwing videos on. When we were kids, it was great. Somebody's going to put on a black and white film reel about albatrosses, and then we can all laugh when we see a blue-footed booby. Oh, that was fun. And and the teacher was getting drunk in the back of the room. Now you're just like, you're inundated with media. Like, I think you'd never want to be looking at a screen in the future. So I guess we'll all retract anytime we've done that. But Paul, do you have it? I'm just mainly interested if you're going to retract it. This is fun.
Yeah, so my problem with retracting is that I realized that I do remember what I said. So I went back and watched part of what I said and realized that I was talking like 1.5 times normal speed. So I like to listen to podcasts at 1.5 speed, but that's what I was talking like normal, and so I apologize for that. But the other thing I wanted to retract is that I didn't actually get too tied up the chaos dragons until the questions and answers. I probably should have led with that.
That's the part, man. You should just have a class, an upper division elective. We'll all take it. Chaos Dragons. Had some students doing that in 201. That was fun. They're kind of inspired by that. Anybody else before I move on? All right, retractions. Now, this is an opportunity for us to have questions for our peers, and we're having the nice stuff. Now, just like let's banter a little bit if we've got those things that we want to think about, kind of either challenging or questioning each other, or then at this point, while I get these cats running, I'm going to stand over here, and then we can have you ask questions about something in the past, or just quadlibetal question. Any question you want.
Quadlibitten.
So, does any?
Thank you.
Can you guys want to? Do you guys have anything for each other, or do you need me to prime the pump?
So I think one thing that's important to note about all of this is there's this conversation, right? There's a conversation that extends beyond this place, and sometimes doesn't make it back to the student. So one thing that happens sometimes will be like, oh, we should talk about that again in front of everybody. So one question I have for everybody is, what are those topics that we kind of, let's say, divert off into that need to come back around, that we need to be talking about? Because some of those were the context and the content of talks this semester, but truly, like, this recap is one of the ways we figure out the direction that we're going. So I can even start that off to some degree. One thing we were talking about, and we never actually really got to in Caleb's talk, was what hidden classes should you be taking, right? we never answered that. We never got that. That was one of those side conversations. We tried to bring it in front of you. We didn't pre-plan very well. And then we didn't get there. So here's a suggestion. One suggestion, I think, for many of you who are out there is you've got to get outside your comfort zone, right? That was clear. I can give you some classes that I think might do that and be accessible to you all at the same time. One of them would be, if you're somebody who's studying humans in any way, right? Thinking about behavioral sciences, but also history, also business, right? Cross-train between those. I would encourage anybody who is studying humans to take population genetics. I think it's a great class, and we really talk about what human means and how we divide humans into groups and not into groups on the basis of science, and take a look at science through a very different lens. I would encourage people to also take a cultural anthropology class, right? I think those would pair up really, really nicely. But I'd also encourage you, if you've not, take an econ class. At Concordia, that's not required, right? You could take it to fulfill some of your GE requirements, but it's a totally different flip, a different lens of looking at the world. I know you all take history already, so we'll just leave that out of this. You're compulsed to do so. But some of those other options are not things that you have to take.
This is a great question. Let's keep it going, because we did promise and not deliver the last time. Great conversation.
At least coming from my perspective, one that seems readily apparent to me, or two, or kind of a trifecta, if you will. I don't know if this is running in the spring, but in the spring, I do know my international relations class, the grand strategy class, is running, and the class that actually goes very well with it is globalization, Dr. Koenig. And also, I don't know if it's running in the same semester, but history of propaganda and persuasion with Dr. Schultz. These classes, and econ for that matter, there's Kit Nagel when you need him, but I would see these classes as actually all pairing very well together.
I'd also add, and I know it is a kind of a history class, but it's with Jack Schultz is teaching about Native American history this spring. Why wouldn't you want to take that? We are living on stolen land, but not only that, fun stuff is underneath our feet, and he has those artifacts. So it's not going to be one of those boring 7th grade kind of classes. This is going to be right there in the enrichment of all those things that Jack Schultz can do.
I always think about, and I'm going to put out a questionnaire to Bella residents about, all right, who else would you like to hear from, right? So we happen to be the essential, I guess, workers here who are here, who are able to come in for a variety of reasons, because we're local, or because we live here, or because we're just able to do that in this season of COVID. But whom would you like to hear from? I think about, colleagues that are teaching things that students tell me, oh, this reminds me of so-and-so's class, and maybe we don't have a relationship, and so maybe when you get that survey, please be vocal. I'd love to hear from VDB again. She's done a talk a couple years ago, and Dr. Soper. These are some of the people that continue to come. But are there other individuals? It was great to see Dr. Tom here this semester. But other individuals that you'd like to branch out, that you have a class with, and you're like, what you're doing is some of the themes that we talk about. It's also cool. So be sure to fill that survey out. Thank you.
And if you invite your faculty, say, hey, I think you really dig this. We don't really like put a heavy, hard sell on things. We try to make it accessible and have people come out, but sometimes people like to be needed or invited personally. So please help us with that.
Actually, kind of on the back of what Kristen's saying, it sounds more like a question to the students than to us. But yeah, this is actually one of the questions I have for students, which is, which class, you can't say any of mine, that's the rule, blew your mind, like changed your life, changed how you think. I'm always interested to hear that one.
You can even just shout it out if you don't want to come down. Does anybody have something like, what do you recommend to your peers? You want to shout it out? History and philosophy of science. That thing has ripples. Like in every class I'm teaching, I can say, I think that person must have been in that class. That's with Soper. What? Post-colonial literature. Who teaches that? Norton. Social anthropology. There's another Jack Schultz class. Cultural. Religion and society. American Literature 1. Thank you. These are good. Like, this is good. Like, we all know that the classes we can complain about. But it's good to remind ourselves of the ones that are just so great. I really enjoyed anthropology of religion with a guy named Garth Ludwig, who was here back in the day, and like that was, I would have taken a whole 4-year degree just for that fun semester.
And fun fact, I had Dr. Schultz, Jack Schultz, for anthropology of religion when I was a student here, and that was a great class.
Yeah, it's a good class.
I think it's still being run.
I also forgot to mention the best podcast that never was hosted by Dr. Kargas at the Global Village, where he had students from around the world talking about America from outside of America. That was like, they say there's kind of like a mystical experience for astronauts when they look at the world. I think one of them said he put his thumb over the globe and said, everything I've ever known prior to this is now hidden behind my thumb. And that kind of expands your perspective.
I was also going to nominate for best podcast that didn't happen with our Strategic Thought podcast on AP Man.
Yes, you're going to have to redo that one.
Yeah.
Now,
problems. But that talk was good fun, because at least for those of us who studied in the UK, I think it brought back memories of the discussions we'd had with a lot of folks who weren't American. At least in my experience. I don't know about yours, but
yeah. So going off of what Dr. Karen was saying about not being able to really get, kind of finish things. One of the things that I want to discuss, but I don't know how easy it will be on this campus, but I do want to keep talking about a very hot topic these days, gender, and move a little bit more into more controversial territory. What is the state of science, psychology, advocacy, and so forth? If we're going to, if we're going to navigate this world in the workplace and in schools and in churches, the one thing that I found, especially talking to students who are LGBT over the years, is that often there'll be something like this where we say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have an open and frank conversation about gender, and then it kind of quickly moves into something that's obviously propaganda, right? Whether you agree with it or not, it feels like a setup. And what I'm trying to figure out, what I'd really like to do is be able to keep going a little farther with the conversation you started before, because, we thought we were talking about who's going to, get the vote and who's enfranchised, which was tiny, it was the right way to go. But I think it's like one of these big elephants in the room that I think if we could demonstrate a way to talk about this humanely and very intelligently, I think that'd be very helpful. Other things like that, things that you were like, hey, maybe I wish we could tease that out just a little bit more. And in a few minutes here, I'm going to just come over with my mic and then spray it. You can ask a question.
I get so fatigued, as you all know, of listening to myself. So I'm tired of saying this, but I'd really like to hear from somebody else about how to mitigate these waters of, who was just talking about, I think it was Dr. Mallinson, right? That now things are just the politics out there are so adversarial, right? So how do you mitigate conversation with individuals who, or in Twitter or whatever, don't do that actually, but that are just so staunchly have a different reality, and that their reality is so deeply embedded. I do think that was a kernel of wisdom, right? That's why I love hearing my colleagues talk. When Dr. Schultz said, have you ever thought that maybe you should just use the tools of anthropology, that was in the election talk, to view the other, right, who has this different political view? That's a helpful thing. But to bring some people in who've maybe done this too. And we had that model a couple years ago in debate here in CU Center, which was very well attended, on religious freedom and sexual equality, and looking at the tension in the Supreme Court of these issues. And I think I would like to see some of that conversation that's more nuanced happen, and dig a little bit deeper into our contacts and our people out there to see where is this happening, where is this being modeled, so we don't feel that the world is quite as polarized as I think that the media makes money off of. And not saying that's a conspiracy, like how Dr. Mallinson just set it up, like it's just so easy to take this top card and be like, that's all the reality. Well, humans are complicated. So sure, they might say these things, but that doesn't mean that they're that way from top to bottom, and that includes on all sides of the coin.
Oh. Hey, look at that. This is like in on actual television where I was like, now we're gonna go live on CNN here, Dr. Schultz. Interestingly, now you can be a CNN anchor and all you need is the little earbuds, right? It used to be everybody had the nice equipment. Now we're rocking a pro. Dr. Schultz, do you have one of the things we're and this was to Jack Schultz, one of the things we're talking about is we've talked about things that we're gonna retract. Like in actual television where
I'm here.
Okay, so we're thinking about things we were going to retract, maybe from things we talked about. But the other thing we were talking about right now is different talks that maybe you were a part of or you witnessed, where we might want to tease it out more, right? That we didn't go far enough. So that's the context of it. And I'll let you think about that. If you want to jump in at any point, you just start talking. We'll hear you.
All right, thank you.
But I was a little itching for more on the politics night, because it was the right time, and things were still unknown. Heck, we're not quite sure they're fully known for everybody, but it was the right thing to do, to say, let's soothe the inflammation. But towards the end, the president of the Black Student Union, Mariama, said, well, she asked some questions that led me to think of it this way, that for all of the opportunity in this beautiful country, this complex country, but all the opportunity we have for us to sit around with a cui bono talk and have these conversations and say at the end, let's agree to disagree, right? There's also people getting shot unjustifiably, right? There's also people maybe trying to take from any other side, take away the rights of religious assembly or something that could be important to you. And those aren't things that we just say, well, that was a fun, affluent discussion to have. Now let's go have tea or beer, as the case may be, right? But that, I think the part that I want to get to is, are there times when we need to get a little bit more gritty and fight against bold evil in the world? And how would a Christian do that? And how would we work on some of that stuff? Because it's not all just academic. Some of this is really personal to people. Some of this is really painful to people.
politics, and some of it reflects our faith. A couple more. I'm going to start walking over here, and I want you guys to be thinking about reflection questions. But I'm still waiting on you. Other reflections to each other? Well, the students come. Didn't want dead air. This is good. Wait, I will hold this.
So we opened the year with Dr. Armstrong talking about our city and our responsibility to our city as citizens. And so since we reflected on our duty to our city as citizens, and we reflected on our history and how we look from the outside and who we are as people and where we've come from and our potential future and also the time we've been in and what that's looked like for our history, I was wondering what your perspectives are on our little Concordia city. Like, how have we grown in this time? What do you think has changed? What do you think what are these changes do you think we'll retain? What do you think we've learned? I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on how that's maybe developed over this unusual semester.
I'm proud of the students that I've worked with. I'm proud of the papers that I was grading through my Thanksgiving purgatory of grading final projects, final papers, etc. And that's in service classes like Q&I, breadth courses, my ancient history classes. I'm proud of seeing students that are not used to college, who are new transfers, first generation students, learning how to get used to what university life is, whether they're resident or not, and then raise communication, the exchange of ideas to another level without dipping into the easiness of ideology or what they're used to of the easy C or the easy B or the easy A, and actually having to face somebody scary like me and say, okay, this is what I haven't done and this is what I have done, without judgment, to see where the growth is happening. I'm very proud of that. That's individual by individual. I don't know what the, so to speak, beat on the street is in regard to how the city's morale is doing outside of the day by day, week by week weirdness of the COVID emergency, right? It's hard for me not to see students in my class. It's hard for me not to see the interaction on campus and the kind of excitement that I'm used to when there's a lively on-campus live student atmosphere. And I'm willing to just continue floating on what we need to right now. But as far as individual by individual, the 100 students that I have in class, the 100 students that I shepherd through honors program, the 100 students that I see week by week at events like this, I'm encouraged and I'm proud. The other thing, as I see in terms of individual growth, this semester has, I think, given everybody an opportunity to play around with things like, everything that you counted on as being the normal structures for life, or a lot of those things were taken away, and it's allowed a lot of people to adapt and try out new habits, new ways of doing things that maybe have allowed for, for some of us, maybe that it has been destructive, but for others, and maybe it's been a both and for people, more creative work. Like I can think of just with the Qui Bono cast, all of that, this is kind of maybe in a sense liberated us to do this. It's allowed, at least I think I can speak for all of us professors, to play around with tech and our classes in ways that we maybe never considered playing around with before. Heck, I actually assigned a game from Steam in one of my classes. Like, probably would have never done that, but hey, it's COVID-19. So I would say sometimes in these moments of crises, it actually forces us to adapt and try new things that actually might make things better in the future. So I think that has also happened for the students in terms of their study habits. I think probably the students who have been produced by this time are probably better at finding electronic resources, or maybe not, than generations before.
Great points. And I also, I think there's some downsides, but with the tutorials, I've had a better time with tutorials because I'll sometimes be doing it. It's like 7 o'clock at night and I've got a tea. I've got nowhere to be. So I'm not kind of impatient. And sometimes those tutorials would go on and we'd get really interested in some creative thing that we're working on. I have one student, Landon Mills, who is putting together a YouTube video, for instance, trying to illustrate what Plato's talking about when he's talking about different modes of music and why that would fit with the Republic. What does that have to do with anything? We wouldn't have done that, I don't think, if we weren't just having as much of that kind of extra time that we could have. Others? We get to another question? Good.
All right. So what are some practical ways to take what we do at Cui Bono with thinking about ideas and theories and imagining a better world and then translate it into a transferable job skill when we leave the university?
Well, speaking as someone who has a PhD in theology, job skills are overrated. No, what I'm saying is the chances are the career you'll have, 20 years from now is not the career you'll have 5 years from now. And so it's more important to know how to learn, know how to adapt, than to learn a set of bullet points.
Yeah, and speaking as the probably second least marketable PhD on the stage,
First,
I'm always just going to draw you back to that idea of what Socrates warns us in the Apology. Just watch out. It's our disciplines. Here's something I picked up from the Bornese talk that I discussed with my freshman classes. We have to be careful to the ways our disciplines blind us. And our majors will do that, and the jobs you're preparing for right now will do that. And I think what this kind of forum does is it opens up the conversation to realize that the world is bigger than my discipline. It's bigger than whatever field I go into. This is a common theme amongst our conversations. And that really is a transferable skill. It's just, it is maybe difficult to put that on paper as a bullet point. But I can guarantee that if you imbibe it and you're having those kinds of conversations and you're living the cui bono, your bosses will notice that. It's going to bubble up.
And I'll tell you this, there's one job skill as somebody who's employed a lot of people and unfortunately fired some people in my life that I hope that you're picking up. And that is, no one's going to hold your hand when you're out of here. You used to rely on the reminders of what your project was every Tuesday when you showed up. But if you're doing some asynchronous stuff, that's tough, but that's a skill that is going to be helpful for you. That self-motivation, being able to take things one step at a time, being able to multitask not at the exact same moment, but rather have multiple tasks and figure out how you're going to get those into your life so you get everything done. That's what we're all working on. It's been very difficult for me this week, but that's the job skill. And executing at the end. The biggest complaint I have about tutorials with students is we had so much fun talking about underworld dragons, or whatever they were, worms with a Y, you weirdos. But then we would get, we'd get to the end, and it's like, well, now it's the end of the semester, I don't have time for it. Now I know that you probably, don't be sad about it, but that's going to be what separates you from everybody else, regardless of what your major is. If you can execute the project, that's the life skill that liberal arts college can also bring. Did you have a question? Oh, they didn't deserve it. We are live streaming on YouTube, so they can see that hopefully. Anybody else for that response? Any last questions? No, I want to wrap this up. Just because I was asked to, and I'm here, and I'm not charging myself. But here's the deal, friends. I'm going to take this off because I'm far away. Here's the deal. I said in the Trembuck lecture that that I think the main thing that guides why I love being at a Christian university, whether or not you're a Christian, is what my youngest Aiden said, and that is that this would be, and he's lived here for many years, and now he actually accidentally lives here again, even though he's going to UC Santa Cruz electronically. And he said, and the one thing that he told, in fact, he told his friends, or he told his peers this at the college, at Santa Cruz, that the thing that's interesting, the thing that you could really value at a place like this is knowing that you are unconditionally loved. And when you have the unconditional love, I should say, that's how you can do the retractions. You can't do it. You can't listen to your own speech if you don't have love for yourself. You can't be nice to other people if you don't have the unconditional love for yourself. If your value is only transactional, then when you hear your voice inflecting in a way you wish you didn't, then you will judge yourself into a pit and you will become frozen up. So you don't want to do that. The only way you can academically excel, I argue, is through unconditional love. Fear of punishment and hope of reward is what deletes from your heart the joy of why you got into what you got into. The little child who starts out playing with dinosaurs and loves nothing more than dinosaurs. When you get quizzed on dinosaurs, you start hating dinosaurs. Some people lose their faith in seminary for a while or forever, not because of liberal professors, but because they were chopping it up like it was a dissection rather than the living word from beyond, right? Unconditional love is what gives you the ability to make mistakes in your political judgments, in your academic research, and to forgive yourself. And if you cannot tolerate failure, you can never really learn in the liberal arts way. If you can't tolerate saying something and looking like a fool, like I remember the first time Dr. Schultz, this is to Jack Schultz, I was such a fan of Jack Schultz, and I never met him because my dad met him and said, maybe you can go to Concordia. They're not as weird as you think. There's a guy who's actually an academic that I think seems pretty cool. And he says he's going to that weird Christian school down the road. I said, well, maybe I could go there. So I was really excited. I wanted to make sure I talked to Dr. Schultz. And I asked him, I was kind of trying to talk shop with him as if he was a sociologist, and he kindly reminded me that he was an anthropologist. And I just like lumped all the social sciences together into some fun little corner of the building. Now, if I just curled up and said, I don't want to hang out anymore because I'm so embarrassed about making the mistake about the disciplines, then I can't play in this sandbox, right? If my skin is too thin on these challenges that a professor can give to me, or a professor can give to you, or a student can do, like that's why I don't like having Jacob Lang in my classes, because he knows what's in the book, and I'm trying to remember it, and I know I made 5 mistakes, and I mean, Joe Pop was in the same category. Like Eliana, you're all in this. Everybody pretty much Cui Bono people, but there's a kind of student that's in a class that I'm so glad you're there, and I wish you were a little dumber. Like Greta's like, yeah, oh gosh, Greta's in my class. Dang, I forgot. Like that's the section that Greta's in. You should have remembered to prepare. And so what did I learn? I learned something. I should be prepared, but I also use that pain as a way to remember. Right? You touch a stove and you burn yourself, and I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to confuse modern day sociological studies with looking at the old dead people's bones. Schultz is a different thing too. He's doing rhetoric. It's a different thing, right? So but what you have to have is that unconditional love. The second thing Aiden said was you need to have a recognition of your intrinsic value. Like you are valued that you're here. You're not like feeling like this is your vibe, but you're just kind of lonely. We're glad you're here. You don't you think you want to drop out at the end of the semester? We still love you. Like we're glad you're here. You are here right now. And your value is not how you perform, but that you're here, and that you're here, and that you're here. You're paying attention. And then the third is that we're going to get through this. It's going to be all right. And I think this is a unique thing about the Christian tradition, and it's an unfortunately misunderstood one. A lot of people, when they hear this idea that things are going to be all right, and in fact, at our church, there's an African-American woman who heard me saying this in a discussion at church, and she got upset. because her father had been lynched in Mississippi, and she moved out here. And she says, I've seen this kind of thing before. This is what we were talking about, racism, whatever. And I don't like it when, affluent white, she didn't say this to me directly. I found out afterwards, it was positive. But like, I don't like it when this like affluent white kid from Orange County comes up and says, don't worry, everything's gonna be okay. And I was talking theologically, and I was reflecting on the real fear I had. But what she heard was that everything's gonna be okay means these challenges that we face aren't real. That we're gonna put, like I think what Dr. Lou said early in the semester, I don't know if he said like toxic positivity or the cult of positivity onto everything. Sometimes when it's time to cry, you cry. Sometimes when you're frustrated, you just be frustrated, right? But you do this, as Bonhoeffer said, because we live in the penultimate. And this is the key. This is not the last semester. Unless it is the last semester, then metaphorically, it's not the last semester. What Bonhoeffer was talking about, we talked about the penultimate, was this idea that sometimes you rest in ambiguity because you know that there's a certainty of truth on the other side. We sometimes confuse the idea that we know what the certainty is and that we have a grasp of absolute truth. We think that that's what we're supposed to get out of college, when in fact, it is the confidence that there is this idea that we will seek and find. And that we have confidence on this journey, sometimes a scary journey, sometimes an uncertain journey, because we know about the beauty that's coming. This eschatological hope, which is at the heart of a Christian university, even when it's not that we pray at the beginning of every class or I put a Bible verse on something. It's the idea that there's something worth fixing in this so badly battered world. And that it's not all on you to fix it. It's not all on us, to tell you how to fix it. But that the kingdom starts here. Whether you realize it or not, like this is what this is about, this Christian university idea. And again, whether you're a Christian or not, can you at least start with the idea that you're intrinsically valuable to us and that you're unconditionally loved and that we are operating with the idea that there is something to repair in this world. There is something to not even fix forever, but even just to bring mercy and love to through our learning. Because what learning ultimately does, friends, is it helps us to understand. And in understanding, we see people and we see their pain and we see their joy. And with Jesus, we remember that we weep with those who weep and we rejoice with those who rejoice. And I rejoice that someday we will all realize that the rejoicing goes on forever and world without end. Amen. Thank you, friends, for being here. We can chat around a little bit afterwards, but have a good night. Thank you for being a part of this semester. Don't forget to follow us on the social medias. Although none of these people have social media. That's the end of the show, everybody. You guys can just get, but none of these people have social media, so I want to link. I'm like, Dan Dean had a great talk. But Dan, do you have any social media? No social media.
I got none.
I will say, Schultzes, do you guys have anything that you'd like to add before? Hal, don't send me away. We were enjoying being here. Goodbye, Schultzes. The Dr. Schultz. I love these guys.